Oh, true. We should have done Caroline plus Faustine Wing.
Oh, yeah.
Parentheses.
Oh my gosh. Time's away.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Beginning. So, welcome, everyone. Today we will be talking about 2D animation, what animation is, and how to put it into your games. I'm Caroline.
I'm Faustine. Hello.
So, first off, to kind of discuss, you might be familiar with animation or maybe not, but what is animation in the first place? Animation is a method in which figures are manipulated to appear as moving images. So this is a animation of a whooper. It creates the illusion of movement in games, which is, so it's one of the most important things in games because games is all about interactivity and getting things moving, going from your input to movement on the screen. So there are two primary methods of 2D animation we're going to be talking about today, and that is going to be frame-by-frame animation and rigging animation. So next, to talk about what kind of animation are in games. Games need a ton of animation, from character animations to environment animations. Pretty much everything in your game is going to need animation, whether it's visual effects, an idle or a run cycle. Most characters you're going to be creating in like your games are going to need at least an idle animation and a run animation or some kind of movement animation. And then whether you need jumping or rolling, attacking, dodging, all those little things, whatever mechanics your game has, you're probably going to need an animation for your character. And then this is all like things that kind of go on the backlog, but if you have time for it, environment animations is another great way to add atmosphere to your projects. So plants swaying, birds flying, fire flickering, pretty much anything. This isn't really animation, but you can also add movement with things like particle effects and stuff like that.
Yeah, and all the above can be done with like what we mentioned, frame by frame and rigging. And for the particle animation, the particle system. So everything can be done in Unity. Yeah, amazing.
And so this is just if you aren't familiar with what a walk cycle is pretty much just how frame by frame animations kind of turn into an animation. So here we just have, I believe this is 9 frames. Yeah, 9 frames, but it's 8 frames with the last one repeating because contact is repeated twice. It just goes through the essential movements of what a character needs to do. This is something that's really good to reference. You can find a ton of walk cycles online, but essentially they're just the building blocks for what's gonna make your character animated. And when it's all put together, it looks like this. So as you can see, it gives the illusion of movement. It makes it seem like your character is actually moving when it's actually just 8 separate drawings taped together. Yes. Okay, so what's the difference between frame by frame and rigging? Does anyone know? Yeah.
Frame by frame is for rigging up a character model.
Yeah, so frame by frame and rigging can both be 2D. So we're actually going to be talking about both. Rigging is something that's definitely more common with 3D animation, but with 2D animation, it's definitely possible, and it's definitely something viable for your games. Anyone else have an answer? If not. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So what's the difference? Frame by frame animation uses individually drawn images and plays them in quick succession to give the illusion of movement. So as you see, we gave that example of 8 walk cycle frames. You just tape them together really quick, play them within like 1 second or 2 seconds, and it looks like there's a person walking on your screen. Rigging animation, they both have the similar goal in creating that illusion of movement. However, instead, rigging uses one image that has been set up into a complex model, usually called like a skeletal, it's also called skeletal animation, and it essentially creates keyframes. So you set up this character to have all its little bones and you wiggle them around to create these keyframes, and the computer generates what happens in between the keyframes. So you have one keyframe with like my arm raised like this, and you have another keyframe with your arm raised like this, and the computer will like generate what's in between. So which one is better? Oh shit. None of them, I wouldn't say that any of them are, one is better than the other, but they all have their own pros and cons. Frame by frame, it definitely gives you more control of what you want. It's more traditional, obviously, because frame by animation has been around for forever. Rigging has only been here for, I don't know, a couple decades since computers existed. So frame by frame animation is very recognizable. It's nostalgic. When you think of old Disney films, they all use frame by frame. You get a lot of control because a rig cannot always do what you want it to do, or if like it's a lot harder to achieve what you want sometimes. The cons is that it takes exponentially more time as each frame must be hand drawn. So if you wanted to do a walk cycle with 16 frames, that's gonna take you, you know, however long that it takes for the artist to do 16 frames. And because all of them are separate drawings, it gets worse and worse because you're not gonna only need a walk cycle, you're gonna need a run, you're gonna need a jump, whatever else. And another con is that it's not always realistic. Because of that time crunch thing, you might only be given 1 week to do an animation. And while you can do it, you might only be able to do 4 frames instead of 8 frames. So you run into the problem of if you want something realistic, it's just gonna take so much time. So sometimes that's what you have to sacrifice. And here are the pros and cons of rigging. Rigging is faster after setup, even though it has sometimes like a perceived higher barrier. It's gonna be a lot faster after you actually set up the rig. You're gonna have smoother results as frames in between the set keyframes that you do are automatically generated. So you can have like 60 frames just between like 2 keyframes if you want. You can have 30. However smooth you want the animation to be, you can pretty much have full control over that. The cons is that you're definitely limited to what the rig can do. Like obviously you can generate whatever keyframes or create whatever keyframes you want, but sometimes it's just not gonna look natural on the computer. So you're going to have to like sacrifice something. And it's also easier to run into technical problems because you don't have full control of just like using your hands to like draw whatever you want onto a paper or like an iPad. You might run into an issue where this arm looks like really wonky traveling across like the screen. And so this is just a quick example of like a walk cycle with rigging and frame by frame. There's pretty much the difference is that frame by frame, you can see, if you like look really closely, you can see that it's like just 8 drawings taped together. And then rigging is a lot more smooth, but usually it tends to have like a style that's a lot more simple because you can't have so much control over the rig. And finally, I'm gonna be talking a bit about how you can prepare an asset for rigging. So the most important thing is to keep layers separate. So when you're preparing any asset, especially a character for being rigged, make sure all your layers or all your parts, like body parts, for example, are on separate layers. So let's say I'm animating a person, my arm and my left arm, my right arm, my neck, my head, my body, my legs, all have to be on separate layers because when you're essentially like putting the rig together, if your arm is like hidden behind your body, then the rig is not gonna know what to do with like your upper chest as part of your arm. So that's very important. Keep all your layers separate. Anything that's gonna have like a separate bone, keep it separate. Another thing, exporting. If possible, and I like to use PSBs, it's a lot larger of a file, but it's gonna be a lot simpler to put into Unity. By the way, has everyone downloaded the Unity package? Okay, if you haven't, please download the Unity package. I believe it's an announcement. Faustine sent it last night or this morning. But yeah, we're gonna need that for the second part of the tutorial. PSB is essentially just a large Photoshop file. So it basically separates all the layers for you. And when you put it into Unity, it's gonna take like a person and it's just gonna like separate. Well, I'll show you it later in Unity, but it's a lot easier. If you do a PNG, because it's just like one flat image, you're gonna have to put like the body part here, the leg here, and the leg here. You're gonna have to separate everything manually on the PNG and then put it all back together in the sprite editor or skinning editor. And the last tip, this is not like a hard rule or anything, but I would definitely avoid overdoing it with effects. While things like textures, lightings, and details, and like shading, all these like little things you want to put on clothing or whatever, all these overlays, they're great, but they might not always translate well to the rig, because when you're working with a rig, it's gonna, like the computer is gonna do a lot of stuff with your original sprite. So I would avoid it, or try to avoid like too many details and stuff. You're likely gonna be able to replicate a lot of these effects, such as lightings and textures, within Unity itself. So yeah, I would recommend to keep it simple.
And you'll kind of like see this in action in our later part of the tutorial, where we like actually guide through like the rigging and like generating the, I think the mesh for the rig. So yeah.
Okay, so now let's hop into Unity.
Yay. Okay, so now we are in our application part of the tutorial. And if you haven't, please like download the Unity package linked in announcements and open an empty file and import it into it. But if you were here for last week's tutorial, you can also just use the project that you had months ago. Yes, I made some updates to the character controller though. So you guys you'll probably have to like copy and paste the new code into it. But otherwise, you're able to use your old project. Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, we have like multiple types of animations. So there's like frame by frame and also rigged animations. So we're first going to talk about just like frame by frame animations, which usually in Unity is generated from sprite sheets. So we're going to talk about sprite sheet animations, and then in Unity about the Unity animator, and then how it kind of connects to code. And then later on, we're also going to show you rigged animations and also IQ solvers, which we will explain. And it just helps you make animation, making like walk cycles and things a lot quicker. Yeah. Okay. All right then. So let's move on to Unity. Let me make sure that I'm sharing my entire screen.
Those of you who want to learn rigging, does everyone have this character example PSB file? Yeah. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to select it. Oh, okay, I did not mean to open up Photoshop. That was a mistake. Okay. And you want to go to the sprite editor. So if you can see, what essentially a PSB file does is it takes a drawing like this, and because I had the head and the arms and the legs on separate layers, Unity automatically like takes that PSB file and it like separates all the layers and it arranges them in a convenient way. Unity fortunately does like separates it pretty well, but if it for some reason like didn't edit it perfectly, like slice every layer well, you can always edit it like this with the little blue dots, but because it looks fine, we're good to go. I'm gonna move to the skinning editor, and this is where we're gonna set up our rig. So you can go under sprite editor, and it's the last option. Yeah, we are skinning our character. Okay, so as you can see, our little dude is back in place. If you were to do this through a PNG, essentially what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to lay out all your parts, and then you're gonna have to put them to get back together. But fortunately, since we're using a PSB, this is all we have to do. So now we're going to start creating our bones. So if you click the Create Bone button on the left side of the hierarchy, you can start creating a bone structure. And this is something I recommend to start at the like base like not, don't start at a limb. Starting at a limb is probably like very bad. You should start at like the hips maybe, or the bottom of whatever's connecting to the legs. So I'm gonna create one for the hips and then one for the chest area, body. And how you do this is you just left click and then you can drag it wherever, and then left click again. Oh shit. Oh. Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna do one for the hip, one for the chest, one for the neck, and one for the head. And then to stop this chain, you can right click out of it and it's gonna do that. So is everyone good with that step? Sorry? Oh, you don't need to import the package for this. You just need the PSB file. Yes. So, okay. So once you are good with this, we're gonna start creating bones for the limbs as well. And you don't want it to be attached to any of the bones here, but you still want it to be parented or somewhat connected because all the bones have to be somewhat like on the same structure. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click the nearest bone, the yellow bone for this instance, and basically it's gonna create a little transparent line in between. And that just means the bones are not connected through another bone, but they're parented. So yeah, I'm gonna drag this to the top of the arm. I'm gonna create one more bone like this and another like this, and that's gonna be my left arm. And right click to clear everything again. And I'm gonna repeat this step for the left arm or the right arm. Finish that. And then you have all your arm bones. And next we're gonna do the same thing for the legs, but instead of pairing it to the yellow chest bone, we're gonna pair it to the red hip bone because it's the nearest bone. Sorry, let me help. I can take a look.
When Unity doesn't work.
So is everyone good with these steps so far?
I have a question.
Yes.
So to go to the torso,
Yeah.
I noticed that like the shoulders, it connects them to like the starting point of the yellow chest bone, which is close near the bottom, but shoulders like
Yeah.
like how does it just connect to the bone marrow? It's specifically connected to the point.
It's not specifically. So Unity is just doing that because that's where like the bone starts. It doesn't really mean anything. That transparent, like the way the line is being drawn across the body has no effect. It just means that these two are parented.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if everyone is good with this. Oh. Yeah, so essentially it just means that this chest bone is the parent of this bone. And I'm gonna delve a little more into what that exactly means, but essentially it just connects the arms to the body in a way that doesn't create another bone. Okay. So now if you see, you can wiggle these bones around if you want. If you drag the edge or like the point of a bone, it's gonna like move the entire, like change the angle of it. But if you drag the black part, it's gonna drag like where the bone starts. So you can play around with that, but don't play around with it too much because we want it in this setup. Okay, so you can notice that while you drag around the bones, it doesn't actually change the sprite. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pair the sprites to the bones. So if you go to auto geometry and make sure that weights are selected, you can just click generate for all visible, and Unity kind of just creates this automatic rainbow mesh. And now if you drag around the bones, you can see it's gonna wiggle things, but things aren't working quite as it should. Like if you drag the right arm, it's gonna like flying squirrel kind of vibes. So this is not entirely what you want, but it's a step in creating a relationship between the bones and the sprite. So, oh, okay. Before we fix that problem with the little flappy things, we're gonna quickly edit the geometry. This isn't super important for this tutorial, but if you want, or if you're doing a more detailed project, you can edit the mesh and make it more specific. It's not super important because Unity does it pretty well, but if you want, these are all tools for you to help be more like specific. Oh, how do I do what? Okay. Yeah. So now if you would like to fix that issue of the hair being a part of the neck, you can go under the weights section. So my preferred method of doing this is just going to bone influence, and you can click on a sprite. So I'm going to select the head sprite first. So right now, obviously, this weird thing is happening. And the reason why this is happening is because Unity is trying to predict what you want to happen in relation with the bones and the sprite. And what you can do is you can select the head sprite and basically remove bone 3. You can either click on this bone or click on it in the hierarchy and subtract it. And that's gonna get rid of every green thing on the mesh. And the green thing obviously represents the neck bone because it's green. That's kind of how they dictate it. So now when you twist around the head, it's no longer doing that weird thing. So you can go ahead and do this for the rest of the parts of the body. Another one important thing, oh yes.
So how did you go from initially to like the color?
Oh, auto geometry and then generate for all visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Generate for all visible.
Oh, auto, I don't want to click it now. Or I can click it now. Just okay. So yeah, for the chest, the yellow bone, you're gonna want to subtract everything, all the limb bones. So I'm gonna go ahead and subtract bone 8, bone 7, and bone 5. And bone 3.
What if we click on bone influence and then when we click on bone 3, it doesn't select this place?
Let me see.
That one you probably do want to do everything.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna explain that next. So just to reiterate on what I was saying, if you ever have a bone that's influencing a sprite in a way that you don't want, just go to bone influence, click on whichever sprite is being wonky, and then subtract the bone from that. And you can play around with this. Is anyone still having issues? Okay. So another way you can go around this is, let's say that this sprite is having, like, you want it to have a little bit more influence with the yellow brush, but you don't want it to completely like take over the red. So you can do this with weight brushes or weight sliders. Essentially, they do similar things. They have similar goals, is to change the weight of a brush slightly. So you can go to weight brush and you can select a bone that you want to like paint on. Think of this as like, you're essentially just painting the mesh with whatever bone you want to have more influence. So I want the yellow to be have more influence at the bottom of the body because I think the red is a little too much. So I'm going to select bone 2. And then I'm going to increase the hardness and step. Honestly, this is just like increasing how much you want it to affect. And then you can like paint on, oh, that's the wrong bone. Bone 2. Okay. yeah, you can essentially just paint on what you want.
Much more resource intensive is this sort of thing compared to frames?
Well, the thing is, this is gonna take a while to set up, but once you have it set up, it's gonna be a lot faster.
Do you mean like computer?
I mean computer, yeah.
Wait, what do you mean computer?
Like from like would it like affect the optimization of the game?
Oh.
I don't like. I think at this stage it's not.
Yeah.
It became important for someone to do the thing.
Yeah.
I think rigging in like larger scales, rigging will be faster or like more efficient. Can you try zooming in? Oh yes. Yes. Oh yeah, I have a 51. Okay. I am just going to fix all of my thingies. Yeah. So I pretty much edited all I wanted to edit. And now when I wiggle my body around, it's pretty much exactly how I want it to be. Okay, never mind, not that part. Like, okay. Now it should be good. So yeah, I can make my character do whatever I want. And it can be like your little puppet. So I'm gonna apply all my changes. Please don't forget to apply so you don't lose all your progress. And you can close the skinning editor. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's just a tutorial. When it's your game, you can make it perfect. And I'm going to drag my character into the scene. And this character is very large because the PSB is very large. So please like make it a bit smaller. I'm gonna make it like 0.2 by 0.2 for the X and Y. But yeah, here is your character in the scene. And if you like zoom in, you can wiggle the bones in the scene as well. And this is gonna be helpful for when you're animating. So is everyone here right now? Huh? Okay. I will wait like a few minutes. Just get everyone settled in. Okay. We are going to be talking a bit about how to actually make animating easier with the rig. So now that we have the rig set up, you can move the bones around. And like, let's say you want to do an animation where the arms go up. It's a lot harder to drag each bone of the arm itself. So I'm gonna be showing you how to use IK solvers. IK solvers is gonna make it a lot easier for you to animate, especially limbs. So you want to click on your entire character called character example 1, and you're going to add a component that says IK Manager 2D. And once you have this set up, you're going to click the little plus button under IK solvers, and you're going to add a limb solver, not a limb. And you can see it in the hierarchy here on the left. Okay, this might be a little confusing, but please just follow along. And I'll explain at the end what it does. You can click on the lower bone of the left arm. And then you're gonna go in the hierarchy and create an empty game object under that bone. So for me, it's bone 6. And I'm gonna name this empty object left arm effector. Oh, so you're gonna right click under the game object and you're gonna say create empty. Yeah, create. I hope it is. Is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, create empty. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna drag this empty game object to the end of the arm. And essentially what a game object is that it's just like something to store information. So right now it's just storing information that something is happening at this point at the end of the arm. Yes. Yes, okay. So make sure that your little left arm effector is at the end, so as close to the point as possible. And essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna click the new limb solver that you created before using the IK Manager, and you're gonna drag this left arm effector to the effector tab over here. You can also do this just through searching for it in the little thingy, but dragging it is going to be a lot faster than searching for it. And if you have successfully done this, you can click create target over here. And now you can see when you click on the limb solver, it automatically does the calculations for you. And since it's the wrong way, we can press flip over here. Flip is just gonna flip the angle. So now you have a little handy dandy limb solver. And this makes animating exponentially easier, especially when you're doing a lot of complex arm movements. Because if you compare this to the right arm, like let's say I wanted to do an arm position in this pose, with this, you can't just like drag it. Can't just drag this bone. You're gonna have to do this, and then like eventually your hands start hurting. It's not gonna be a fun time. Use a limb solver. Yes. Wait, where's the towel left? Yeah, don't worry about the hot chuck toast. That's an old towel left. I don't know what it's doing here. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna repeat the step again in case you missed it. So you start off at the character example and you're gonna, I already added the component, but if you haven't already, add the IK Manager 2D component. You're gonna hit the plus sign and create a limb solver. And the limb solver is down here. I'm gonna create one for the right arm now. So I'm gonna click on the bottom right bone, and I'm going to create an empty game object, name it right arm effector. Oh, don't forget to, wait, where did my thing go? Oh, it's right here. And you're gonna, don't forget to drag the effector to the end of the arm, because if you don't do this step, it's not gonna know where to create the effector, and it's gonna mess up a lot of calculations. So just remember to do this step. You're gonna drag the right arm effector to the effector, and you're gonna create the target. And look, you have done it again. You can flip it again, and now you have 2 limb solvers. And you can also do it for the feet. You should do it for the feet, but because of the tutorial, running long. I'm not gonna waste anyone's time with it, but if you have questions, please ask me. Faustina, are you good?
Yeah.
Left is exercise.
Left as an exercise.
Yeah, it's left as an exercise. If you need help, you can ask me. But Faustina, are you good with spreadsheets?
Yeah.
Any questions?
How do you do that?
What?
How are you doing?
Oh, I forgot.
Honestly,
Oh, I had kava today. It was pretty good. Yeah. Kava?
Kava. It's a good restaurant.
It's really good. Okay, yeah, I'm now done unless anyone else. I'll come to you after, but Faustina, do you want to start?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Okay, I'm gonna repeat this for Caroline. Okay, recording back up. And last time I'm asking you all to download a package. Hopefully the newest package on GitHub works. It is now in the announcements as well. The updated link is there. And try downloading it and let me know if it works. If it doesn't, we'll continue as well. You can do it without like the characters, like the tile map too. It's just for like visual purposes as well. Okay. Yes. Question. Oh yes, I will share. Let me know if you have any questions and if there are any issues with the pattern. And we're not going to care about that.
It's not game breaking.
It's not game breaking. It's a warning. It's not an error. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Bad practices. Bad practices. Yeah. I do not condone. I do not condone. But try to resolve errors and warnings in your game project when you can. But sometimes it's a Unity issue. So look around. Yes. Okay. So who is ready for us to move on to the next step? Is anyone not ready? Okay, so I guess we will move on to the next part. So as I showed earlier, the character moves around, but is not animating. And what we want to do right now is to add an idle animation and hopefully a simple walk cycle to it. We can run through this again. Go to the player, click on it here in the hierarchy, and then go to its components in the inspector and add an animator component. Just click on the bottom, click on the button at the bottom and search for animator and add that. So now we have an animator added. And now when you click on the player and then open window, animation, you can open this window and it'll ask if you want to begin animating with the player. So note here that the animator and animation are two different things. And animation just deals specifically with different clips of animation. And the animator affects specific game objects, which are just like the entities that we're working with and animates it using different animations. And you'll kind of see that as we go. Yeah.
Another way to think about it is the animation window is gonna control like what the animation actually is. So like what frames are being played or what keyframes you have locked in, essentially like what it looks like. For the animator, which is like that top right or like that middle right window, that's gonna control like what animation is playing at what time. So like it keeps track of if your player is idle or if it's running or whatever, what state it's in.
Yeah, it keeps up track of the states the player is in. Okay, so once you have opened the animation window, you can click on create. Who is able to follow till this step? Okay, all right. Do you need any help? I can click Caroline, can you probably help. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. This is a very like Unity is a lot at first. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And now you just go to the animation window and then click create, and then make this idle animation we've been trying so long to make. And you can save it to whatever folder you want, but you can also like just create a new like animations folder. Yeah, and once you have done that, you should see like a little timeline pop up at the bottom. Okay, anybody have any issues? Anybody have any issues? Okay, we're gonna move on. And feel free to raise your hand to interrupt me and let me know. Okay, so now we're gonna go to this sprite sheet. And then when you click this arrow here, it'll like expand it and show you all the different like sprites that are hidden under it, which we have shown in last week's tutorial on how if you just have this raw image to turn this into like smaller sprites and images. So if you want to make an idle animation, we kind of just identify like which frames are part of the idle animation. And I kind of figured it out during my own time, but you can kind of like experiment with it, look at it. Also watch the original example clip that you that the asset store provided. But essentially these first two images here are part of the idle animation. So if you look at the bottom right over here, you can kind of see the image change, and then it's kind of doing a little bob if you click between them. So what you want to do now, after you have the animation timeline up and also these images shown, you just go in and then drag it into the timeline. Okay, yeah. And also don't worry if you can't like remember all of this. This also took me like a few times. Every time at the beginning I had to like review it so that I remembered how to like do the animations. So this is your first run through of how to do animations. And this video will also be uploaded so that you can review it. Yeah, of course. So I will show. So if you go into your sprites folder and you find the player sprite here and you click on the arrow, you'll be able to find all the different sprites. And you just select the first two by using like shift or control and click, and then you drag it into the timeline, the animation window. And if you press play, it's gonna like do a very quick idle animation. It's very fast. So now what you want to do is so that you drag it, drag the second frame. Oh, okay. So if that happens, you might have to reselect the player in the hierarchy. Okay, but yes. My idle animation is crying. But yes. So now if you drag it out to a more like comfortable second, maybe I think I did 15 seconds for each ball. 1500. Yeah, actually it still looks a little quick. I think I might have to add, yeah, that happens. You got the 0 in. Yeah. I think I'm gonna add another clip of like the original one so that it returns that state after. And then, cause like right after there's like only a small wait. So if you return immediately, it's gonna be like without the second clip. So I'm gonna show that again. So right now it looks like this. And you wanna kind of adjust it so that it works. So I'm gonna add the original like tall character because it goes down and up at the end so that it's slightly more comfortable like that. Yeah, so the current order is player 0, player 1, player 0. For when I say that, I'm naming like the images here. Okay, yeah. Do you guys have any trouble getting to that step? Anyone who was able to get there? Okay, awesome. Yeah. Okay.
At least make it like equal time.
Even.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Yeah, that was father.
Yeah, the reason why I did this because it kind of does like a nice little quick bump. If you do it like equal. It looks nicer with 25. Yeah. So I'm gonna prefer 25 just for personal taste, but you guys can also do 30. It's just how it turns out at the end. This is where your creativity comes in. Yeah. Okay, so that is our idle animation finished. And if you go into the animator at the top, you can see that it created this orange little box here with an arrow connected to it. And that shows that it is default. Its default state is the idle animation. And if you can't see the animator window, you can open it in the window tab and just go to animation, animator. Okay, so now if you press play, the character drops to the floor and then does a little idle animation. Yay! Yay! Okay, amazing. Okay, and now what we want to do is we can also try to create its walk cycle. So if you click on the player again, and then go into the animation window, you can click on this drop down here and then create a new clip. And then I will navigate back to my animations folder that you may or may not have. You just kind of save this clip wherever. Best to have an organization, well-organized like game project though, so that you don't have to worry about finding your files. So I'm gonna name this walk. And now it has another empty like animation timeline for us to work with. And this time we will select these 4 frames here. This is the walk cycle for the character. If you look at the bottom, you can kind of see the different frames that it has available. And if we put it in, we just, again, select them all and then drag it in time. And then if we play it now, it is Sonic. And we can just like, again, drag it out so that it's like slightly better, like more realistic timing wise, and kind of just edit the little like, this time I will make it equidistant. Oh yeah, and it does a little jolt at the end again, because of how the clip ends right here. So again, we might wanna add back the first clip so that it kind of returns to that state. And because of this little time here, we might wanna move it back so that it drops perfectly till 40. Yeah. It's all just like taste and things like that. So you can kind of like edit how the clips are playing.
It looks like it's walking towards us.
Yeah, it is walking towards us. It is walking towards you. Get ready. Yeah, so were you guys able to get to this step? Awesome. And definitely let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so now that we have that, you will, if you open the animator window again, you will see that your newest clip has also been added to the list. Yeah. Yeah, so the walk cycle is player 2 through 5. Yeah. And then you will see that your walk cycle clip has also been added. And if you look at this, like the fancy term for something like this is like a state machine. It basically means your player can be in multiple like states. Yeah, do you have any questions? Okay. I think okay, thank you guys so much. It is so, okay. So now if you want to connect it into the script, we're not gonna go too much in depth into the code because it's like a creative tutorial. But to help your awesome programmer on the team, or if you are the programmer, how to set up this like animator is basically what it wants to know is when to transition from one state to the next or one clip to the other. So first of all, right now the idle animation and the walk animation, they're kind of disparate. They're kind of like by themselves, and the walk animation can't ever play. And what you want to do is like right click on idle, and then click make transition and connect it to the walk cycle. But that's not all. So that's not all. Right now, if you click play, it's gonna do this. It's gonna idle for a little bit, and then, oh, like for a split second, yeah, 1 frame, and then it goes into the walk. But we don't really want that. So we want it to walk under certain conditions. And also we want to deselect has exit time and fixed duration and select 0 for the transition duration. So all of these settings are more useful for 3D animations because in 3D animations, sometimes you want to blend between animations. So like when the character is moving or while moving, it is looking somewhere. But in a 2D animation, usually you just want it to go from either jumping to falling or either walking to idle. So we deselect all of that. And we also wanted to be able to go from walking to idling. So we right click on walk again, and then connect it back to idle. Okay, sounds good. And you do the same thing here. Click on the arrow, deselect exit time, deselect fixed duration, and select transition duration to 0. And actually, like, you don't have to deselect fixed duration. You can just like set transition duration to 0, and it'll like remove it. But yeah. And how do we like connect this to code? So what happens is you want to create conditions under which it'll happen. So if you go into Animator and go to parameters, you can add different conditions here. And we can add a Boolean. A Boolean is basically a true or false, but you just think about it as 2 states, true or false. And name it walk. And then create a new Boolean and name it idle. Yeah, I'm going kind of quickly, so if you have any questions, just like let me know, and I can stop. And after this part, I can also come around and help you. Yeah, so go to parameters and make these 2 Booleans. It's called a bool here. Yeah, and name it walk and idle. And make sure the capitalization and everything looks the same as what I have here, because it's how the programmers will use this. That will like kind of affect it. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And then you can click on the arrows, and then under the conditions list, add the walk and add the true. Yes. So when the walk is true and idle is false, you want to go from idle to walk. So that's that arrow. And then for this one, you add also 2 conditions. Let me delete that. When walk is false, and then idle is true, you go from walk to idle. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? I'm gonna come around. Yeah. And I can also show you this after.
Yeah, I need to do that.
Okay. So actually, now the only thing you really have to do is we're gonna put our like programmer's hats on, and just really quickly delete, uncomment some lines, and we will be able to see it, see the animations.
How do you connect idle and walk to the animator?
How do you connect idle and walk? Okay, so let me just show you really quickly. So if you go in here and then uncomment these lines, and if you don't have Visual Studio, I can also just post this code for you, and you can just like download it and plug it into your character. Yeah. So go into the scripts and just look for the parts that say uncomment for animations. And then if you can't find it, I can also just help you because this is kind of out of the scope of a creative tutorial now, really. The original state of it looks like this. So it looks like uncomment for animations, uncomment for animations. So you can just like go to these two lines and then delete these like slashes, and then also this slash over here, slash star, and this slash star. Yeah, so there are two segments you want to uncomment. After doing that, Control S, and then your character should be able to animate. Yeah, and if that part if you have problems with that part, I will also come down and help you. So now what it should look like is it walks around. Yay! Wow. Okay. All right. So that's how kind of the workflow looks like for animating in Unity. Yay. Okay. And let me know if you have any questions and if you want to like kind of play around with this.
Steve, are you done with the tutorial? Because if so, I can stop recording.
Yeah. And that's it for the tutorial. Thanks, guys.